Economic Development and Planning Committee. Please take the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Strawn.
Here.
Mr. Hairston. Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Ms. Baker. Here. Ms. Simon. Here. We have a quorum. Let the record reflect Mr. Miller is also in attendance.
Great. Thank you very much. And is there any public comment in relating to the agenda itself?
No, no one has signed in.
Okay. And it's the, we do have the minutes from the previous meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at the September 18th minutes? The chair will move to accept the minutes as written. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Tuma. We still have a quorum? Yes, we still have a quorum in the room. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor of approval of minutes as written, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing no opposed, the minutes are approved from the previous meeting. It is the intent of the chair to take the two items in order, and then we'll close with the update on the economic development loans as we discussed at the previous meeting. And we do appreciate getting the update from Mr. Carter in regards to the loan program. So we'll be discussing that, but I do consider that everything that was discussed in the last session regarding the budgets and the staffing and things like that might be questions that could come up, Mr. Carter, in regards to the loan program. So we have guests in the room, so if we could take the first item and read it into the agenda, 0188.
Resolution number 2017-0188, authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $15 million County of Cuyahoga, Ohio, Economic Development Refunding Revenue Bonds, University School Project in 2 series.
Thank you. Is there anybody here to speak on this?
Good afternoon. Sarah Parks Jackson with the Department of Development. The Department of Development is requesting the authority to refinance industrial revenue bonds for 2012 that this body, actually the council originally approved in the amount of $15 million. And the refinancing is related to 2 additions built in 1999 and 2001. To further elaborate on the project, we have David Wright, who is the CFO of University School, and Ms. Virginia Benjamin, who is bond counsel.
Well, before we get to that, is there any, you're here to talk on the funding side. We'd like to hear about the project side too, but the county is taking forth the initiative on this, or is the university school?
This is conduit financing, so
right.
We serve as the pass-through. We issued the initial bonds for this project, and if I'm not mistaken, the subsequent refinancing prior to this. So generally when we have our bond recipients come through for refinancing, it's at a time where they can get a better interest rate, which allows them to do more things at their projects. And it's not really an underwriting type of activity.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Thank you. As Ms. Jackson mentioned, this is refunding of 2 series of bonds, 2012, 2010. The proceeds were used to expand the campuses of University School and Shaker Heights and
Excuse
Valley.
me, ma'am, right here. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, thank you. It's Virginia Benjamin with Calfee, Halter, and Griswold. I thought everyone knew me.
It's okay.
So the refinancing is required because the bank that currently holds the bonds, the period of time when they were holding them is coming to an end, and so the university school has to refund the bonds. And as Ms. Jackson indicated, this is refunding of bonds that you've already issued, and the projects are all completed.
Okay.
So if you have any questions about U.S., we're happy to answer.
Yeah, the rates must have gone up, though, since the 212. Would they have done?
You may want to answer that.
No, that actually was in, we refinanced it in 2012, so the rates have actually gone down since 2012. We had a fixed rate at 3.15, and now it's a little above 2%.
Oh, fantastic. I wouldn't have thought you could have got that kind of number today. That's excellent. And it can't be 2012 because that would have meant 5 years went by since we sat here and had this conversation. Man, that was a blink and a heartbeat. I can't believe it. Yeah, because Ms. Simon, you were on, does it seem like 5 years ago? If you would have asked me, I would have put a date at 2 or 3 years ago. And of course, I have also a 17 and 18-year-old kid, and they just turned 20 or 41 and 39. So, well, congratulations to you. The campus looks spectacular, everything about it, except for at 7:30 in the morning when I'm trying to go past 91 and trying to get past the traffic there that seems to back up. Are there any questions about how this works? We've got some new members of the committee. If you wouldn't mind just giving them a background as to what this bond means versus the other bonds that we traditionally would see, where we actually are being the backstop for it, because these are brand new committee members that have just joined council within the last year.
Sure, these are revenue bonds payable solely from loan payments made by University School, theoretically to the county, although they go directly to the bondholders. So the county has no liability for the payment. They're not general obligations at all of the county. And if and to the extent, not that we expect this to happen, but if University School were not to pay the loan payments, then the holders of the bonds, in this case First National Bank, would not be looking to the county for the repayment, but solely to University School.
And so when you hear bumping up against debt ceilings and things of that nature, this would not be having any impact on the debt ceiling or our borrowing limits or anything of that nature. They're just using our good offices, as I understand. Is that a good way to phrase it to use?
Well, the Internal Revenue Code allows the interest on the bonds issued by a governmental entity for the benefit of a 501c3 nonprofit corporation to be tax exempt, and so that's why we're asking the county to do this on behalf of University School.
And do we process a minor fee or something like that for? Is there a processing fee I think goes through?
Yes.
Okay, I don't remember what the fees were, but I think that's the administrative side of what goes through on this. Sarah Jackson.
Yes, on the refundings, there is a $500 administrative fee.
Okay.
That.
I think, as I recall, now 5 years ago, I asked the same question. I'm probably going to ask right now: is that enough to cover our actual internal costs to do the paperwork, to do our administration, to do everything in regards to this? $500 does not sound like a lot of money for the time and energy of sitting in this room and all the other things. And I know that University School is not a for-profit organization, but they also have to realize what the administrative costs of processing one of these from our end takes, as far as council and preparation and meetings and writing up minutes and things like that.
The issuance fee is more significant. However, as a department, we are looking at all the fees so that when we come back to this body, we don't just bring you the bond refunding fees. We're looking at all our application fees and how we move forward with the structure for those.
But as I recall, that was the same number we had 5 years ago.
It's been around for a while, yes.
Yeah, so I just would have thought that normal inflation would have caused it to have gone up to some number that would have at least made sure we cover our administrative costs. And I would be willing to bet it with the interest rate reduction. Now, we're not going to do anything here, but in the future, that would have been more than able to have been covered by the interest rate reduction and the advantages to the in this particular case. So I would just ask you to make sure we're here. The previous 2 hours we spent discussing budgets, and if you look at administrative fees all across the board in anything else in a 5-year period of time, it's not unreasonable that we would be charging $750, $1,000, something of that nature that would cover our costs. So with that, I ask you to think about it. Is there any other questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Baker.
Can you just very, very briefly just tell me exactly what University School Project, what it is, what I really I've not heard of it before.
The 2012 refinancing goes back to 1999, where we did 2 projects. One was on our Shaker campus.
Okay.
And that was a science and theater edition.
Okay.
And then the other was a field house at our high school, was athletic wing.
And if I may, what then is your vision for future projects?
We're looking at doing some renovations at our Shaker campus in the next 3 to 7 years.
Okay. All right.
But, excuse me, but none of the proceeds of these bonds will be used for that. This is solely to refund the prior bonds.
It is.
Right.
Okay, good to know that.
Now,
Thank you.
I am in my other life, I'm in sales and marketing. And one of the things that we've done as a county is we've created a fund for institutions exactly like this, where we can use our over $100 million that's sitting in our investment pool, of which we can get interest rates that would be attractive to both sides. We're getting nothing basically on our side, so I want to mention that out there. And the legislature is about ready to extend from 5-year commitments to 10-year commitments, and we're looking at well over $100 million of funds that we would like to have actively used by schools and communities out there. So in the future, if you want to take out some debt, we would be able to get in those same kind of 2% ranges for you, and it would be a win-win for both sides out there. So I just throw that out there as my sales and marketing hat for the county out there. Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we would like to request that you waive the third reading and pass this on second reading.
Okay, I don't have the authority to do that, but we can make
No,
the
but
recommendation
make the
as it
recommendation
goes
to
forward.
council.
Sure. In light of that, the chair will move that this goes before the full council for a second reading with suspending of the rules. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of a second reading approval going forward to the full council, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none? Thanks.
Thank you.
Was that too hard of a sell on our other product? Okay. Okay, if we can read the next item into the record?
Resolution number 2017-0189, authorizing the issuance and sale of healthcare and independent living facilities revenue bonds, Series 2017, Eliza Jennings Senior Care Network Project, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $55 million.
Sarah Parks Jackson again for the Department of Development. Again, we're asking for approval of a resolution that will authorize the refunding of healthcare bonds for Eliza Jennings Senior Care Network. We have previously issued conduit bonds on behalf of Eliza Jennings and would like to have your approval to do the same for this request. Again, Virginia Benjamin with CalFi and Miss Kathy Shields, who is the Chief Financial Officer of Eliza Jennings.
Well, rather than ask the question, so I'm sure you have the narrative pretty well down, so if you can please speak to it.
Yes, I'm Virginia Benjamin with CalFi, Halter, and Griswold. This is refunding, actually, of two bond issues, one from 2012 and one from 2007. The county originally issued bonds beginning in 1988 for the Eliza Jennings group. The first project was the Renaissance in Olmsted Township. They also have the Eliza Jennings home on 10603 Detroit in the city of Cleveland, and Devon Oaks Assisted Living in Westlake. And the county has over the years issued bonds for the construction or expansion of each of those. This is a refunding of those bonds for basically the same reasons as University School is doing their refunding. They can get lower interest rates, and they're currently with a bank that has indicated they want to renegotiate the terms. So Kathy can tell you more about Eliza Jennings Senior Care Network and any other questions you may have.
Please, if you can take the microphone and put your name on the record.
I'm Kathy Shields. I'm the CFO of Eliza Jennings Senior Care Network. I can talk a little bit about the project. We've had some financial challenges over the past few years, and this refinancing is probably going to be very meaningful for us in terms of interest expense savings. Our plan in this refinancing is to use all of our excess cash flow to pay down the bonds as quickly as possible, so our balance sheet is in a better position so we can access new capital for some expansion in the future.
And what's the rate differential you're going back and forth?
Again, it's very similar. Our half of our debt is fixed at 6%, and the other half is has a very unproductive hedge associated with it, so that our all-in interest rate on that debt is around 7.35%. So this will substantially lower that to all variable rate debt with interest rate cap,
Okay, so were we able to move it down to, just for curiosity?
like somewhere between 2 and 3%.
Okay, but it does have a variable rate, so you're
Yes.
gonna, is it likely that you might, if that rate starts to bump up, you'd be coming back before this body to ask, to try and fix it and lock it down?
It should not happen because we'll have an interest rate cap, which will protect us from very significant interest rate increases.
Okay, well, the cap's more than likely has bump ups after periods of time, I would think. But anyway, that's your
Yeah, our
internal
hope is- our
financing.
hope is
We're
to
not
pay
worried
enough
about your
down,
internal
yeah.
financing, more curious than anything else.
You didn't help us negotiate?
I can. Well, no, I can't, actually. That loan program that I referenced in the last session is not going to be applicable to you because it only goes to schools, cities, villages, and
Oh,
townships.
darn, I was ready to ask for some money.
Yeah. Well, if we had a guaranteed funds, the one commonality is they all have the ability to collect taxes, which you don't have that ability to do in your years. So perhaps we could do something else, though. We could create a separate vehicle, but that's the reason for that. Questions? Any questions from anybody? Hearing no questions, do you need, this is a second reading suspension, I
please.
assume also?
Thank you.
You look like you're getting ready to
Yes, I
make
was.
that request, so is there a motion?
Second reading suspension.
And it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approval for second reading, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one item left from discussion from the previous council meetings, and I see we did get an update in regards to it, and we don't have photocopies of some sheets that were provided to us earlier today. Mine, I know where mine photocopies are. They're sitting in my company printer. There's still a way to come out, but everybody, I think, had it beforehand. So if we can have somebody from Economic Development come up and bring us up to date on the loan programs and where we are. Everybody does have a sheet, I think, in front of them, but everybody has a one sheet or one pager on that. Mr. Carter, if you could just initially start talking about only the one sheet page, and because the other pages are, thanks. That's the project charter sheet.
Okay, so this list, at our last, Ted Carter, Chief Economic Development and Business Officer for Cuyahoga County. This one pager reflects part of the work that we've been doing over the last 6 months at the direction of the executive to research and account for all economic development loans. In order to do that, we went back and looked at every authorization mechanism where a loan could be initiated or authorized. So that we went back through county commissioner records, Cuyahoga County council legislation, as well as Board of Control since January 2007. And so we picked a 10-year window to account for loans. And so what we learned through that research, and that was done by the Economic Development Improvement Team, which was a group of county employees from across the county in conjunction with my staff. And Ernst & Young reviewed some of these loans on a requested basis, but the bulk of this work has been done by internal county staff. So we've identified that there are 350 possible loans. And then we began to do the process of elimination. So subtracting out the duplicate names, so we have loan files that have similar corporate names and naming conventions. So we eliminated 23 of those loans. And then we subtracted out loans that were identified before 2007, getting you down to 283. And so as a result of other kind of debits, loans that were authorized but now been terminated, loans that have authorized but not yet closed, loans that have closed, but there's been no drawdown or payout. We have determined that our portfolio as of October 26, 2017 is 194 loans.
Okay, well, as we walk through here, let's just make a couple stop points, and we can just, how do we end up with duplicate loan names or non-economic development loans, 23 into your 350 unit portfolio?
Some of those loans have LLC names that are similar, where they're individuals, and so we determined that who is the receiving body, and so we eliminated loans that had duplicate names or corporate names.
So we were tracking those as though they were separate loans, those additional 23?
In some instances, yes.
Were we collecting money on them? It'd be nice to think, if they're paying under both names. But do we have when that happens sometimes, it just seems to me that if I've got two names in an account and they're sending us checks, are we applying the cash correctly for all those 23?
We are now, after we've gone through this process, we believe we are now.
Historically, were we? I mean,
yeah, I don't think it was precise because there wasn't this rigor that in the review of the portfolio. So I wouldn't say, I can't answer because I wasn't here, but I don't think that it was as rigorous as it is now. So now we've eliminated duplicate names, and we think we've arrived at a group of loans that represents our portfolio.
I'm just asking in terms of the borrower. If I'm a borrower and I'm paying you, I would like to think my money is being correctly applied. And if I have got two names in your file and I'm only sending you one check, do we reconcile the payments for those duplicate names?
Let me just confirm that, Mr. Schron. So through our process, do you think we're good there?
If I may.
Please, yep, sure. I'm going to walk these things through, and if anybody else wants to stop as we go through and ask questions, just down to the number 194.
Thank you, sir. Paul Herdig, work with Ted Card in the Department of Development. Mr. Chairman, this information from 350 down to 283 was the work product of Heather Reffett and the team of staff that she led. And as a closeout session, myself, Sarah Parks Jackson, Heather went over them line by line, called out each name. And as Director Carter has stated, the 23 either had two different authorizing resolutions with different names, or were transactions that were determined to be grants, not loans, or were transactions that were determined not to be economic development loans. They might have been housing loans initially thought to be economic development loans. So none of the 23 were loans that were ever collected under two different names. They were, however, eliminated as apparent transactions that should not, in fact, be counted as economic development loans.
Okay, just so as we're building a record here, you just went through three different scenarios for those 23. Could you just send us the breakdown of that, just so we don't need it now?
Yes.
Just how many were housing loans, how many, so we can get to the number 23?
Yeah, Councilman, that will be provided. That is on the spreadsheet, which we will provide to the committee.
It's on this spreadsheet you just gave us here?
No, on a spreadsheet of the entire 350 that we provided.
Gotcha.
I believe to committee staff, but we'll make sure we do provide.
Okay, great. I just wanted to so we can actually track the numbers. Any other questions? Yeah, I should have stopped you at 283. Questions from the 350 to 283? Yes.
Yes, we're looking very closely at the loans, but I would imagine, was there any payments or unaccountable money that came in and we don't know what to apply it to? Because maybe the name is different than what they first signed up, or maybe it just wasn't legible, or is there anything where there was perhaps overpayments or uncertain of where payments should go that you found along the way in looking so hard at these loans?
Councilwoman, that was not reported that there were any payments that could not be tracked to the proper loan account.
Okay. Let's go down to the next line, 44. Some have been paid for in full, and some were excused, it sounds like, based on forgiveness, is what it says.
Yes.
Just give us the breakdown of 44. How many did we did we waive the obligation, and then the dollar value that would be associated with that?
Okay. Let me just describe Mr. Herdig's role. So in order to do the transfer from the edit team, both he and Ms. Parks Jackson. Mr. Hurdick is now acting as the interim loan portfolio manager, so the person that we had doing this before has been asked not to further be involved in loan portfolio management. So Mr. Hurdick, until we hired a permanent person, has been the person working with Ms. Jackson to reconcile in detail the list that the edit team provided, what we call the omnibus list, and then we've gone through to refine that to the loans that are currently active.
Only because you opened it, you said Mr. Hurdick is going to be doing this until a new person is hired. Is this the person that we're hiring as an outside consultant, or are these one of the 5 or 6 individuals that are internal?
No.
That we just talked about in the budget?
The loan servicer is the third-party firm that we're suggesting that we go in contract with. The loan portfolio manager was approved in the mid-year budget. That's going to be an internal person that will have the responsibility for being the custodian of our loan portfolio.
Okay, so that's the person that's going to be replacing what Mr. Hurdick is currently doing?
Yes.
So, okay, is that person on board, or is that?
No, we have posted that position, so we're in the process of finalizing interviews.
Questions
And,
in
close
regards
to-
to the 283, to get to that number? All right, so we're going to get a breakdown, and all I'm doing is picking up on your double asterisk that says part of them were fully paid and part of them were excused or some form of forgiveness. So I'd like to get a breakdown of what the forgiveness was and how much we, the county, walked away from. And is that a recent forgiveness that we've just come to the determination we're not going to collect? Or is that a forgiveness that took place in the
There's
past?
been very few loans that have been forgiven during the executive's term, and certainly only one during my tenure here.
Okay, well,
So
just,
we can provide a breakdown of those.
just give us a
Now
breakdown
we have a
as to whether,
policy of how that, yep.
okay.
Okay.
Yes,
That 44 was before 2007, right? But there is no current in that.
That's correct.
Okay,
well, the only current is what I heard just a minute ago was that there was,
right, but that's not in that 44 number. Whatever is 2008 and beyond is another issue, but we're
well,
talking
we'll just go
now-
back to, as long as we have that open, the forgiveness could have been current of a loan that was beyond 2007. You said you,
So just responding to your point, Mr. Schron, during the executive's tenure, very few loans have been forgiven. Only one has been forgiven during my tenure. So to your point, there could have been a loan that existed since 2007 that has now could have been requested. That hasn't happened.
okay, just to go back and
forgiveness
find out,
hasn't happened, no.
identify who's, what loans are being forgiven. As you recall, at the last meeting, we brought up the question as to whether or not anybody was caught up in the corruption scandal. And so we're going to be looking to make sure whose loan was forgiven. Was it somebody that we all are concerned about, anything of that nature? So, all right, let's move on. Unless anything else on the 283. Hopefully we got those numbers reconciled. Let's go down to the 194. Those are loans that are subsequent to the 207, 2007. And they fall into, it looks like, the same categories: now terminated, not closed, closed, and no payout. Give us the background on those as far as now terminated. It's got the same double asterisk stars on it as you had in the above one, so I can only assume that means that some of these in that first 65 are paid for and some are forgiven.
Yeah, just for the sake of efficiency, I'm going to ask Mr. Hurd just to come and click through this list, and I'll provide color and commentary. So, Mr. Hurd, would you come in just that way? No misinformation that's being represented.
Color commentary was that baseball game last night. That was kind of wild. Yeah.
Thank you, Director, members of the committee. As Director stated, we arrived at the figure of 283. Again, this work primarily led by Heather Reffert and the edit team, although Sarah and I did sit with her line by line. The 283 consists of all loans authorized before 07 that were still open, where some money is still owed to the county, plus all loans that were authorized since January 1st, 2007. That was the project description, that was what they went to find, and that's what they found. Then, with this agreed-upon list of 283 loans, we continued the process of reviewing each and every loan file, and this determined that out of that set of 283, 65 were loans that were authorized since 1107 and had since been terminated. Terminated, as has been discussed, meaning either paid in full or meeting the legally agreed-upon conditions for forgiveness, not forgiven without agreement, but meeting the conditions.
Okay, there's some kind of an agreement that you folks struck with the borrower that together we've agreed that we're going to satisfy whatever provisions, and we're both going to walk away.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that we'd like to know who those are and how many dollars were involved in that termination
Yes.
agreement.
The next category, there were 22 loans that were authorized since 1/1/07, meaning there was a resolution first of the county commissioners, then when the form of government changed from either council or the board of control. And we listed all those in the spreadsheet, and then research determined that 22 of those had not been closed. In other words, there had not been signed loan documents executed.
Oh, you mean by close? I guess I was reading that the loan was still open. You're telling me the transaction, well, details are not even in play?
Had not been consummated. And
How does money leave this county to go to someone?
if I may, sir, there were no payments on these loans. These were loans that had been authorized but had never been closed, and therefore never paid.
Okay.
There was no instance found of money going out without having a loan actually be closed.
So to that point, you all have now passed legislation which puts a sunset time on when companies can still access authorizations for funding that
Gotcha.
council has authorized. So we have companies that will, come seek, it'll be approved, and then for whatever reason, the payouts are not made. And so there's a couple over the past couple of years that come
Gotcha.
to mind. One where we were about where a company said, we got other funds, we don't need the county monies at this point. So now they have a time certain, I think it's 18 months, Sarah, is she here? Is it 18 months? 18 months, and we are also in the process of loans that preceded that legislation, sending out notices to each borrower to inform them that they've got a time certain to let us know whether they're going to access this money so we don't continue to hold this capital on our books. And so that will be money that will be recycled in.
Okay, so we got 22 that we've done all the prep work on. We did everything, but we never actually lend the money out to individuals.
In some cases, sir, very little was done because after the authorizing resolution was passed, it became clear the company was not going to pursue it. So the finalizing the legal documents would not have happened.
But we have allocated the funds in our, I would think, on our
Budget.
I don't see the budget director out there. She was there for the longest time. So are any of those monies still standing out there as far as authorized to be paid, and yet we still are holding those funds?
There are some where money was authorized, and part of the process our staff is doing, as director indicated, by sending a letter to the borrower informing them that after a period of time, 30 or 60 days, it'll be taken off the books. That will allow the money to be released, no longer encumbered.
Okay, how much money are we talking about? Does that fix our budget problem?
No, sir.
Oh, that's too bad.
And it's not all 22, sir, but there are a number, and our budget office, Anthony Henderson is our budget analyst, working very closely with our staff to make sure we don't miss any of those, and those letters get out there so that after the 30 to 60-day period, that encumbrance can be released.
How much money is sitting in those 22 loans that's been encumbered?
We'll get that information, sir, as part of the follow-up report. We've promised that we have the spreadsheet, and we'll note on that spreadsheet the amount of each one.
Is the county executive aware of that we have 22 commitments of which money has been allocated and set aside for in the event that these were to close?
We have briefed the executive, sir, with the same information. Again, I don't want to state that all 22 have encumbrances. They do not. It is not 22. There is some smaller number which we do have and will provide, all of which is being cleaned up now.
Okay, well, give us that number too. That's interesting information. If we got monies that are encumbered against loans that are never got, because quite frankly, if somebody doesn't want our money, we don't have to force it on them because they're getting a good rate out there.
And as
Question-
directors indicated, the sunset provision will reduce that in the future.
But the sunset provision was not in these original loans.
That's correct.
Yeah, these are, but I think it's reasonable to expect that after a certain period of time, we're just going to call, our money back off the table and say, to heck with it.
That's in process, those letters are being sent, and those discussions are being had with the borrowers where that condition exists.
Okay, well, let's just make sure we don't have a detrimental reliance where somebody's done something going back to law school days of, that somebody's already changed their position. So let's make sure we don't step on something in that. Questions in regards to, we're down now to item 65 and item 22. Questions from anybody in the committee? Okay, then we've got one other item to get to our magic number of our portfolio, which is 2 closed but no payout.
Yes, sir. And of those 2, one, our staff has indicated will never be closed because the potential borrower, after even signing the loan documents, indicated to our staff, never mind, they found some other money. It was a little more complicated than that, but it was the deal structure was such it was to their advantage to use another source of funding. But they realized this after they had closed the loan, and so are not going to draw. And the other one is a loan that actually will be drawn. It's simply at the time the snapshot was prepared had not yet been drawn.
Okay, were we the conduit to provide them with better financing through their other vehicle?
Sir, I was not involved in that, so I don't want to answer that question.
Okay, well, it's again back to the fees structure, that if in the event they're using our good offices, our ability, and then they go out and use that commitment to get a better rate someplace else, I think it's very, very appropriate for us to be charging a fee. And then if they walk away from it, that they waive that fee as part of our loan commitment. I mean, and that's not an unreasonable place to be. I know my bank does that to me, so there's nothing that says it's inappropriate for that to have a fee, and that can be fairly substantial too, of which you can give them credit back. But by all means, if somebody's using our commitment to help them and get better financing, why shouldn't we at least recover the cost that it takes? Because I'll bet you every one of these things, you guys have probably 15, 20, 30 hours of time before you ever walk in this room to prep those loans.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that gets us to 194.
So of this number of 194, this is what we consider to be our portfolio, because these are 194 loans where an entity, a person, or a business actually owes money to Cuyahoga County. So then further analyzing the portfolio, and this again builds not only the work done by Heather and her edit team, but also our own staff. We've continued a process of double checking that the information in our computer system matches the actual loan documents, the actual payouts that were paid out, and the actual repayments that have been received. So staff have been engaged since the time we were last before you and just finishing last Friday in looking at each and every one of these loans on the computer to make sure those 3 things are correct. So based on that, we're now able to run reports that we have confidence in, and we basically noted for you that of the 194, 77 are performing. This means there is no lateness whatsoever on the loan. Any payment that's owed has been made within the time it was agreed to be paid, and which means 117 are non-performing loans, meaning that there's at least some lateness of payment that was not made within the time agreed. What we did then,
Okay, before we go down there, that got us into 2 buckets: performing loans at 77, which are not obviously a worry of ours at this point, and non-performing loans. What I think we've now established for this committee is once a quarter, let's get the whole 194 and tell us what's going on with those 194 as far as performing and non-performing. So we'll just get an update once a quarter. If you tell me that's too much, let me know. Otherwise, we should be able to identify that, I think. Is that,
no, sir,
any committee members, is once a quarter? Does that sound within the range of what you'd like to see? Okay. And then after 6 months or a year from now, if everything's hunky-dory, then we'll move it to 6 months, and then from there, once a year, and but only because it's on everybody's radar screen right now.
I'd only make one amendment to
Sure.
your recommendation, Mr. Chair, that be a lagging, so it's not until we perfect this, and we're well on our way to doing that. So Q4 of 2017 will report out in Q1 of 2018, so it's not by the end of that.
Oh, no. We'll pick, fourth quarter will be our first meeting in January or second meeting in February or something like that. We'll pick that, so we'll give you plenty of time.
Okay.
We're not trying to be junior accountants to collect your money on that.
But eventually, as we get our system set up, loan portfolio manager on board, and a dashboard, one of the things why this has taken so much time is we had to go back 17 years of data just to get to this point of having confidence in the portfolio. So now that it's stabilized and we have very good information about our loans, the loan terms, we should be able to turn this information around more quickly. So.
Okay, of the performing loans, as I recall at the last meeting, we talked that there were 8 under your direction during your tenure, and I don't know, it's hard for me, I can't do the math quick enough as to how many were from 2011, your predecessor, to when you came on board. Where would those fall into those 2 buckets of 77 and 117? The 8 loans.
Yeah, so it's 5 from 2015 to 2017. Some of that overlaps with my tenure that are non-performing, and the rest proceeded.
Okay, so 5 of the 8 loans under your tenure are non-performing?
Or non-performing.
To be precise, we've broken out, as Councilman Sean was suggesting, if you look at the non-performing loans, we've broken them out in a couple ways. One way is when they were closed.
Gotcha. Okay, I see it down there.
To the newer.
Got it.
As Director stated, there are 5 that were closed from the 1st of 2015 through the 1st of 2017 that are currently non-performing. And there are 21 that were closed during 11 through 14 that are currently non-performing. And what we've broken out like across is how many days non-performing, or days late, as is commonly stated. We go 1 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 plus. We can still consider pre-collection while we're making efforts to get them back on track. When they're then sent to collection, Mr. Douglas's firm, currently the firm that we use, they then go into the collection column, and we rely at that point on our outside attorneys to take collection efforts, advise us if they're even collectible at all, and basically drive the bus in terms of further collection.
They get turned over to collection at post how many days?
I would like to say we're working towards a system where it will be done uniformly at 90 days. I do want to say this is part of our ongoing efforts to standardize what we do. We are moving in that direction. I cannot say it was uniformly done in the past, but the standard we're aiming for is at 90 days. If our efforts have failed, they would be going to collection.
Whew, that's pretty short. Okay, well.
I will also say, because I'm not
I wouldn't, but that's,
I apologize, sir.
That's okay. Just 90 days is, it seems on the short side. Questions in regards to that explanation, where we are?
Feedback, we also asked, why what was an acceptable period. They said just from where you've been, it's probably better to have more consistent and frequent engagement, and the 90 days is a cutoff that they were comfortable with. If people are in trouble now, we'll be more engaged because we'll have a specific person engaging the borrowers, as well as consistent invoicing, which we haven't had. So, people are looking for relief. Those discussions with the businesses will have some flexibility, but it won't be years, and then all of a sudden we're sending them to collections. So if you have a point of view on that, be open.
Well, it just concerns me a lot when our portfolio has 194 items in it, and 99% of those or 99 of them are in collection. That's more than half of our portfolio is in collection. That's a scary percentage of anybody's business to have half your receivables in collection. I mean, that's not a good number.
We can't disagree with that, sir. We wish that it would be otherwise.
Well, I guess part of that is turning it over to collection as opposed to doing it with internal staff to stay on top of these things. So I would highly suggest, well, from the chair's standpoint, that you get people trained up to speed and be on top of these accounts. Yes, Ms. Baker?
Do you count in that 60 days? And I agree that is a little aggressive. If they try to make a payment, right. If they make a short payment, or they make one payment, skip a month, make another payment, how do you put them in your collection scenario?
well, this information is based on what's in our portfolio system. So now, again, as part of that outreach and engagement, we'll have more intimate discussions with these borrowers. So as we've sent out invoices, borrowers have come back and said, listen, I've made payments, they're not reflected accurately. And then so we're going to work with people, and so those are judgment calls, but this is a starting point.
May I continue?
Sure.
So that 99 may not be a collection number. That could be some that are willing to work with you, and that number perhaps could drop and take out of collections?
Yes, once Mr. Douglas can speak to his experience so far, we've had one company that I'm aware of that has come in and said, I want to work with you. I've tried to make payments. They weren't reflected. You didn't capture them. The information's in error. So,
Okay, there's another category that doesn't show up here, and I can only assume that it will migrate to that category, which is litigation. Do we have any of this 194 that are being litigated for collection?
Why don't I have Mr. Douglas come up and just give you a summary overview of his experience so far? Is he still here? Yeah.
Okay, well, before we get to that, is there any other questions in regards to how we got from 194 down to 77 good loans and 117 that are non-performing, but of which 99 are in collection? Any other questions in regards to that?
If I just get some clarity, because you are totaling these and putting them in columns, that 99, they're stated to be in collection. So that means that you've exhausted all ways of reaching out to them and hopefully putting them back into the days late category. I mean, that 99, is that deceiving or misleading, that it could be a better number because maybe half of them have said, hey, I want to work with you, don't put me in collections, and you'll pull them out? How does that...
It's a fair question, Councilwoman. I would say that borrowers that we identified as owing the county money, there was a point in time before we did this level of analysis and we had this level of, we sent them to collections. And so Mr. Douglas is engaging those folks. And so as people have those conversations, I'm brought in and then we have a discussion with the borrower. So they very well could be, and there are some people who had a minimal amount of money, a late fee to the county that was recorded in the system as they were delinquent. And so we're now saying, well, listen, if that's a $50, for example, is a late fee,
right,
and they're willing to pay it, let's move them into a different category of designation.
So if I may, so this...
Did I answer your question?
You did, and actually I think probably there should be another column in there that says, of those 99, how many are really, realistically, can we negotiate with to reclaim those funds? Because once you go to collection, then we pay a fee for having that collected, we take a reduced amount, and it's a long shot, especially if they're old, that we'll even get any money back. So to our favor, I think it would be good to put in perhaps another column of who you're working with and the reality of perhaps more funding coming that we're not counting on. The second thing I just wanted to say too is that once this work was an enormous amount of work, so we're past this, new procedures are in place, everyone understands what their job is and how they're to collect and even to loan. So wouldn't you anticipate that from here on it would be a more efficient and simpler way of doing business, and that all the work and labor that was involved in getting this much done won't be needed again?
That is my expectation, yes.
And then if that's your expectation, why we have 3 people that were proposed to be added to your payroll. One is the assistant to you, but the others were to be more in control of what's going on, I believe, in these loans. Will that really be needed if good policy and procedures are in place that reduces the amount of time and labor that it will take to move forward on?
I would say yes. The assistant is to the loan portfolio manager that was proposed in the budget. The second position, which we didn't get to, is compliance. So one component of this that we've attacked is getting the underwriting and the collections process improved, but the other part is job creation. So there's a compliance position that we're requesting that be funded to do more intimate and aggressive job creation validation. So the loan portfolio manager will maintain these loans and then really have stewardship of the portfolio as a, we expect to be doing more. And these are complex loans, so there's an enormous amount of hours that are put into this. And so I'm very comfortable with the level of staffing that we've requested to ensure that this doesn't happen again, because we've gone from, our staffing has been diminished, and I'm told if you look at what the city of Cleveland has, which is a third of our, I don't know about our loan, but certainly our population, a much bigger staff. So we are understaffed and have been for several years. So this budget is really a catch-up, a reinvestment budget to get to a level playing field, stabilize, and then make sure that all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And now I'm confident, this is probably the most confident I've been in the last 18 months, where we have excellent visibility around the condition of this portfolio. And so we don't want to underinvest and we slip back, and the loan servicer is really to ensure that we don't send it to collections, but we are,
right. And if I just may ask, the people that you have in place now, you believe that they will be at full capacity, 40 hours a week, they will be busy enough on top of what the others are now going to be hired to oversee? You have enough work in your economic development inner office, not out there trying to create more interest in coming to Cuyahoga County, but actually internally with all of this in place now? Because we've been underinvested, and so there was a staffing deficit, and so the staffing that we put forward in our budget also, we're fulfilling recommendations that E&Y made around staffing. I'd also say that before we had people playing dual hat, and so part of our effort in staffing is to segregate that. So there's a loan portfolio manager with core responsibilities for this portfolio, not for making loans, but the stewardship of the loans and the data element. So the analytics that you've asked for, that I've asked for, it's a labor to even produce this type of information. Right. So we'll have people who that's all they do. And so on a quarterly basis, a weekly basis, we need to turn information around. They should be able to do that. So I'm very comfortable with the staffing and can defend the workload. So the work will just realign and will be more, it'll be an office that is more specialized than generalists doing multiple. Just one further. Sure. Any thought of not outsourcing once you have control of your organization and people are in place and you're at full capacity? Can we not go into collection and take on that role and do it in-house? The servicing. I'd have to sit with the executive and tell him my current assessment based on the work we've done and with some additional hires that we intend on doing. He and I had a very brief conversation on Friday, but that requires a much more detailed dialogue with him and what he's comfortable with and what I'm comfortable with. And so while that's a scenario, right now we're moving down the path of moving toward a loan servicer. And, they may come back and may have some type of hybrid, but right now we are moving down the path of a third-party contractor because we believe that it's the most efficient and effective way of ensuring this doesn't happen again, that the staff that have the training and expertise to do this, and that they're incentivized the right way to all right. Thank you. Collections on the county's behalf.
Well, and I would be remiss if I didn't say congratulations. Thank you very much. I know this is not a fun place to be amongst us 6-8 weeks, but we are going to hold your feet to the fire. I hate to say that, but congratulations on getting to this point. I think it's important. I am concerned that 4 of these loans are already over 60 days that were done in the last 18 months. I don't know how that can be. If I'm a borrower, the last thing I want to do is look bad in the first year and a half of borrowing your money. I want to make sure I'm making my payments.
All right, let me just during the first 2 years. So we'll get you the exact date so you can see the distribution of. But some of these loans were a part of a program that the terms allowed for balloon payments, and so.
Well, then that's not, I hope we're not looking at loans that had a balloon payment in there, because that's not a late payment if they're living within the four corners of what we agreed to. But if they're supposed to be paying us on time and they're not, that would bother me. Of these that are in there, these non-performing, 117, I would like to know, because this body always asks, and I remember my good friend Dave Greenspan would always ask, what's our security? What's our position? Where are we with personal guarantee? Where are we with the real estate? Where are we with the capital equipment? I'd like to know what our security interest is in those 117, because
So
yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So we will send you an updated list where we actually have, the list that I have that you don't, shows the number of loans by each time cohort that have guarantees associated with them.
Yeah, if you got a personal guarantee, man, I can be fairly unfriendly if I was in your shoes. If somebody's not making payments and they're sitting out there of those 99 loans out there, because one is that they don't want their credit, because that can go against their personal credit side of the aisle too. There's no reason in the world that we should be on the hook if they have a personal guarantee, equipment, finance, or real estate. We should not, and none of those should be turned over to collection, I wouldn't think, if we got that. I would just be applying a little bit more lever on it. Mm-hmm. And your point of a hybrid, perhaps the answer is that we don't turn it over until 180 days, but we work it really hard if we've got a security interest for those first 6 months. If we're holding a security interest in a piece of machinery equipment, if we're holding a piece of security in a real estate or a personal guarantee, before I turn it over to collection, I would be putting hard and saying, you realize we have these.
Right. And you raise a good point, and Councilwoman Baker raises a good point. So these were sent to collections over a year ago, and part of this was, we went from the IG identifying that we weren't making any efforts, and so then we went to the other extreme, right? And so the point of this was to demonstrate that we have a firm that's motivated to, that the county wasn't just allowing people not to pay. And so, so now as we go into the next stage and phase of refinement, we can have these conversations. So the good news is we've invoiced, again, every borrower. So for September, October, people have been invoiced. So they got kind of initial omnibus invoice. And we had been invoicing before, but I mean, we did a comprehensive, even if they've been invoiced, they got another letter saying, here's your loan balance as of August 31st, or September 1st. And so they'll get another one for November. And those invoicing has generated inquiries. And so borrowers have called our office saying, the amount that you invoiced is incorrect or already paid. And so now we're getting into these discussions. Mm-hmm. And so loan portfolio manager, that's their first job one, is to, okay, here's the list of people we've heard from. Go figure it out. And then they will make recommendations to me about how to satisfy and come to some type of agreement. And depending on the dollar amount, those may even go to the county executive. So we're in the process of having those discussions. And so the invoicing has generated positive feedback from our borrowers.
Okay, well, as they move along and they ignore you, they would start getting a nasty gram saying, oh, by the way, you have a personal guarantee, we intend to move on it. We have a real estate and we intend to foreclose on it, or we have a piece of equipment that we're going to seize the asset. Now, we've done all of our part, right? We've recorded the mortgage with whatever position we're in, first, second, or third, and we've recorded our financing statement, the UCC. So we've done our part to make sure that the world is aware that we're holding security in all those.
Most of those loans, so as Mr. Hurdick talked about, so we've gone through every loan to make sure we've got all those elements that's appropriate, and where we don't have that information is not in the file, we're going back to do more work. So there are some instances where every document that is required on our part, there may be some elements missing.
Well, if we still hold the loan, we can still go out and ask for the UCC ones. Yes, Mr. Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Carter. Appreciate the hard work you folks have done in your department on this. You mentioned that IG started the ball rolling on this whole process. Obviously, there's been legislative oversight from us, this body up here. Have you had any discussion or any contact with the IG with respect to the work that you've done to date, or gotten any feedback from him or any input from that department?
Here's how I'd answer that question. The IG has been in our weekly, not weekly, but periodic update meetings on the progress of this with the executive. We have a meeting, I believe, later this week to sit down and give him an update on this work. So he has not had the benefit of seeing the handoff from the Economic Development Improvement Team to my staff. And so we're going to be going through this document in detail with him. I think we had it scheduled and he couldn't make it. That preceded this hearing. So his last window of visibility is going to be around the work that the edit team did, that Ms. Reffert and her team, that list of loans. So that's what he will have a reference point, and then we'll walk him through this in detail.
Okay, so he has been a part of the process up to this
The
point.
overall process, not the specific stage of it.
Sure, I understand, but he will be
Yes.
briefed on this and anything proceed moving forward. So, okay, I think that's an important element since that independent body started this process. You have legislative oversight, and then he can continue to be a part of that. I think it's important. Thank you,
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Director, may I ask a question about this other sheet that analyzed the 99?
Yes, sure.
My question is that when I look at this chart and I look down each of the columns, you add them up and the totals match each of the categories. But if you look at it across, for example, you take the first row, it says brownfield and it says number of loans placed 6, and then you look at the items in the different categories, and it adds up to way more than 6, and so I'm wondering why that is. Are these not mutually exclusive categories, or what does that mean?
If I may, certainly defer to Mr. Douglas, his law firm, but this chart you have in front of you, the summary chart, was produced by one of his associates, also named Mike, and I actually had that conversation with Mike when it came in and said, Mike, why doesn't it add up? And his response was, I'm giving you multiple pieces of information about some of these loans, which is why it didn't foot. So the same loan might have several categories associated with it. And
Okay.
I do apologize. I think we've misplaced our copy of the chart.
Here you go.
over here.
If you need one.
We'll borrow one from council and sign it. Thank you, council.
But to answer
This is the chart.
to answer a question that I think Ms. Baker was asking earlier, this chart does suggest that out of 99 loans, 28 have been closed and 32 appear collectible, and that leaves 39 that could go either way. So that kind of gives you some indication of what the collection agency thinks this is looking like.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is David Douglas from Douglas & Associates Co-LPA, and thank you, Councilman Miller. The columns are not mutually exclusive, therefore it was designed more to give an overview as opposed to a itemized count, quite frankly, because we don't generally want to talk about cases that are in litigation or which may go to litigation in a public setting for a number of reasons. But this was
Not specific cases, but the aggregate number is not anything confidential.
No, it is not. So at the present time, we have 99 active files that have been assigned to our office. When those files come to our office, the first thing we do is read the files and perform several levels of due diligence with respect to those files so that we know what questions are going to be anticipated from the borrower, and so that we can make sure that we have the information we need to proceed on behalf of the county. Some of that involves going back and meeting with the county and with Director Carter's staff to make sure we have an accurate understanding, because, again, many of these loans were made, over a decade ago, and we want to make sure the information we have is both accurate and current. These loans typically have multiple sources of funding, some of it public, some of it private, some maybe from other public entities. So there are multiple documents that affect what any creditor can do based on what the position of the other creditors might be. We also have to look to see what is the security ranking of the county, how was it perfected, when was it perfected. So a lot of these we've undertaken that analysis and gone back and forth with the director's staff. To Councilman Baker's earlier question, yes, we have uncovered some that they had subsequently brought the loan current. It really wasn't in default. There wasn't anything for us to do other than to verify that the loan documents were in place. And before we do anything on a case, first we confer with the director and his staff. And litigation is not normally the first thing that we would do. We understand the program of any economic development department is to create jobs and create stability for our community. So if a borrower is in default, that's a legal issue, that's a financial issue. But we do understand the original goal of the program is to make jobs and to make the county more attractive. So when we're looking at these loans, and some of you may know this, some of you may not, I've been doing this type of work for 38 years. I represent the State Department of Development. I represent the City of Cleveland's Department of Development. We've represented other municipalities who have development funds. I'm very familiar with what you have to look at to be able to make an effective recommendation to your client. And we understand that suing people gets their attention, but there are other ways of getting their attention first. Sometimes you do have borrowers who quite frankly think they can beat the system. You have to have a strategy that is both polite, respectful, but also firm, so that someone doesn't say, well, I think I can call so-and-so and have this problem go away. That's, we want to make sure that we make decisions based on facts, based on economics, and based on the legal instruments that are in front of us.
Mr. Chairman,
sure.
To Mr. Douglas, is your fee based on a contingent basis where you get fees only for loans that you collect on, or are there fees regardless of whether or not you're able to collect on a particular loan?
The legal fees are based on a contingent basis, which is a sliding scale based on the bids that we submitted. And there are some costs that the county could incur, i.e., if we have to pay a filing fee to a clerk of court or we have a deposition expense, those are reimbursable expenses.
Okay.
But the fee is actually a contingent fee, as quite frankly are most collections, legal collection contracts.
And for the ones that you found that the loan was basically okay and that you just needed to verify that all the documents were in place, would there be a fee on? Would there be legal fees on that, or is that kind of before collection activity started?
Well, we're not going to get paid. We don't get paid an hourly fee. We could spend 5 or 6 hours analyzing a case and decide we don't think this is worthy of suit. It could be for a number of reasons. 1, the borrower has since cured the default. 2, the party has a discharge in a bankruptcy. 3, the party is deceased. 4, there's a receivership. There's a number of cases where we'll do the job we're hired to do, but we're not going to get paid a fee because it's not collectible for any number of reasons.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Douglas, one more question. Are the contingent fees based on a percentage, or is it based on an hourly rate, or how does that work?
It is based strictly on a percentage.
Okay.
Ms. Baker, I think you had.
Yeah, I did. And thank you to Councilman Miller on looking at this second form. I would, in simplistic terms, in looking at this, the up here collectible is 32, and the closed file is 28. Can we draw from that, and I know this is a fluid document, but can we draw the conclusion that of the 99, 32 of those appear to be collectible out of the 99, and we're, for the most part, writing off those 28? Is that how this document is to be read?
Yes, of the 28, those files, we reviewed them, and we made recommendations to the director that no legal action could be taken, or that it would be a waste of the county's time to take further legal action. Those were cases where there was a bankruptcy discharge, or the party was deceased, or there was no personal guarantee and the company was no longer functioning. That type of decision is made. There are some where we don't know the answer yet. We try to rank them based on what we think the outcome is, based on our preliminary research.
But if I, not to interrupt you, but if the 28 that are in the closed file, there's no question about those. You've
None.
already analyzed them, they're done. Is that 99, does that correlate with grand total non-performing loans under collection? Is that 99 the same 99 that's on the second page? Under number of loans placed?
I can tell you that I verified this morning. Our office has 99 files that are active that have not been closed. Of the total number of files that were originally given to us, I believe we received 126.
Oh, okay, so 99 plus 28.
Right. My math may not be exact on that, but
Okay, so, okay. Yeah, I would think, yeah.
Would you mind going over that again? Because we're showing one sheet that shows that you have 99 in collection that are, I assume those are in your bailiwick, Mr. Douglas?
Correct.
And then there's some that are also written off, that you received, 126. I heard that number. What is?
right. We have, as of today, and as of the date of the report that we submitted, we have 99 files that we are still working on behalf of Cuyahoga County from the Department of Development. We had previously had an additional 28 files that we had reviewed, analyzed, and made a recommendation to the director that no legal action could or should be taken on those loans because of the facts and the law with respect to the conditions in those 28 loans. So those 28 loans, we were asked to review them. We did that. We completed our review. We made a written recommendation, which Director Carter approved and notified our office of that. So those 28 are closed and finished.
And do we know where those are on this sheet? Are they part of the 44 that have been terminated? Are they part of the 2 without payment, or the 65? Where do those 28 fall?
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, no, this is, I guess, more the.
We'll have to get back to you on that, Mr. Strong.
Okay, well, we show 99 that are in your transfer to your side, Mr. Douglas, and like my colleagues up here, we're having a hard time footing the numbers going from left to right, up and down. You can see 99 of those 99. I think you're telling me that there's a subset of 32 that you believe are collectible based on this sheet?
Correct.
And there's 28 that are closed of that 99, I think, if I'm understanding the sheet correctly?
No, the 28 are already closed.
So
the 99 are the cases that are still active.
Gotcha. Okay, so
Mr. Chairman?
you got 32 that appear collectible. So therefore, what is the status of the remaining 67?
There's a variety of different statuses. Some of them we're still waiting to verify certain information.
Okay.
Some of them we have had some contact with borrowers. Some of the borrowers, quite frankly, don't, when they first get the notices, they're in shock, and sometimes they think that we're not legitimately representing the county, so we have to go through this procedure of verifying to them that yes, we really are a law firm. We really do represent the county. We are not a scam operation. We can provide them the appropriate validation so that they feel comfortable having dialogue with us. If we need to, we get a letter from the law director or the director of development to confirm that. But a lot of those, we're still examining what the best strategy to take would be. We rank them based on the information that we've received, and
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, I'm just, in my opinion, everything right of, you have 99 is work product internally within your office, and we have nothing, we should not rely on it in any way, shape, or form for internal use. Is that a fairly safe thing to say?
I think that's wise.
Yeah, I think so too.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Miller. And then Ms. Simon.
On this chart that contains the 99, the line on the very bottom of the page that says summary, it says, out of 99 loans, 28 have been closed, 32 appear collectible. That leaves 39 that could go either way. So that line clearly suggests that the 28 are part of the 99, which you seem to be saying the opposite.
I am. And I think part of this comes from the fact that we've received the placements in different increments, different groupings. So some of the loans have more thoroughly vetted and determined what their statuses are, and others we have not. So the classifications that we created to the right of the number of loans placed, that's from what we call our active inventory. We run a report in our office that gives us our active inventory. We also wanted to reflect what was our closed inventory. The information in between that is dealing with those two categories, and some, could be in multiple columns. So it wasn't designed with the idea of providing a one-on-one analysis of each loan. It was trying to give us categories so that we could more effectively communicate with the department, and so that we could manage the cases in our own office. For instance, we don't have the column on this report. We don't indicate how much we've collected. We don't indicate, the statuses of individual cases.
Okay, just Mr. Miller, just reading your footnote that appears in this piece of paper that somebody from your office created, saying that there's 39 out there. So it's a very confusing document, at least for me, as to what Ms. Simon?
So just a quick question on that document. It says new product, and what does that mean? I don't have it in front of me now because I gave it back to you, but there's the Western Reserve Fund, I don't need it. What is that new product? Does that mean since our new government formed?
That is we use the names of the portfolios that economic development use in tracking the files in our office. So if the loan was called a Western Reserve loan, that was the program loan name that we gave it. There's another category of loan called new product development that was a relatively smaller amount loan that didn't have personal guarantees, I believe, that were, I believe, for people who had new ideas or new businesses.
Do you know the date? Can I have the dates, time frame that new loan products were, or you can get back to me?
Yeah. With that. So new product, those are loans that were certainly pre this administration, and they were riskier, more innovation related.
Pre-new government or pre-administration?
Pre this executive's term.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't say for every one of them, but most of those were in like 2004 to 2007.
Okay.
We do in the last column. Do they have this report also? Okay.
So when you call, so sometimes they're shocked or don't think that you're a credible collection firm calling to collect on their outstanding. That's funny.
Because of all the articles in the paper about scams and things, when people ask us that, we say, that's fine, we'll provide you the validation that you're required to receive. We try to be respectful. We understand that, it's in today's world, it's a legitimate question.
It is, I guess.
Yeah.
Really, we'll catch up to them, but.
Yeah. Well, especially if we have a security and personal guarantee or anything of that nature in the situation. These columns that you've got in here, Mr. Douglas, which is 4, 8, you have 8 columns on here as far as the loan program. Mr. Carter, of the 194, why don't we go ahead and, I hate to say it, but I'm sure that you got a spreadsheet that maps up with this, your 194 that are in our portfolio. Let's map those against those to see whether or not one are a higher risk of non-collection type loans versus ones that we collect our money on. And those that don't have security, which are quick new products that we can understand. And it's easier to write those off in your own mind that those were our version of venture capital than expecting capital collection on that.
Yeah, that's easily done.
Well, I assume the spreadsheet's got some form of loan origination program sitting next to it.
On Mr. Douglas, these are, the loan program names are our naming convention.
Right, and our 194 should be able to map up with that same thing at some point along the way. So if it's on the spreadsheet, great, you don't have to add it to it. But if it's not, we should identify as to when, I mean, this is, when you talk about big data, this is big data stuff. And when you start to collect the big data, then you start to be able to do some logistics and analytics and, hey, this is a good place to go, this is a bad place. This we get paid on, we don't get paid on. This creates the jobs, this didn't create the jobs. You indicate you're going to sit down with the IG also with your sheet of paper?
Yes.
When's
that? Is that meeting this week? Oh, it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow? I would highly suggest, if you could, between now and then, you tell him which ones are personal guarantees, which ones we have a real estate security, and which ones we have equipment, because I'm sure he would like to know that same. He's only going to ask the same question that we just asked, and he's probably going to ask the same one about the loan programs. Other questions from anybody? I think we're getting there. We're getting information. We appreciate it, and we don't want to keep begrudging you on this thing. Probably the next time when you get those sheets to us, this is basically the 1st of November for all intents and purposes. If you can get those sheets to us by mid-December, does that seem reasonable?
Do me a favor,
Sure.
Mr. Strong. Can you just go back through your requests if you haven't?
Yeah, my requests were, tell us what the status of the guarantees were against our loan portfolio out there, especially the ones that are non-performing. I'm more concerned about those. Do we have a personal guarantee, equipment guarantee, or a real estate guarantee against it? And more than likely, if we have one of those, we probably have a personal guarantee, because I can assure you at least those during our tenure here in these since 2010 or 2011, that was a question you would have heard from this panel up here, and I can see by the nods of your colleagues that would have been a question we would have asked. And then just applying the loans against your loan program, so we know which programs are working, which ones are not, so we can see that. And I'm sure it's all on the master spreadsheet. You were going to give us a breakdown of the asterisk, double asterisk, as to the dollar amount that was forgiven and the amount of those under the 44 and under the 65, which have already been forgiven, that are now terminated. And did I miss anything? Yes, Mrs. Baker?
I'm not sure of what was in there. Had further explanation on the 99 with 32 collectible, with 67 in an uncertain status. If you can elaborate, I'm not sure if that was in your list or not, elaborate on those 67 to say whether or not, first of all, they're not part of the closed number, although at the footnote it says it is, but we're deciding here right now that there's 67 on top of the 32 that appear to be collectible, perhaps maybe a lower tier of uncertainty. If we can get a little more explanation on that.
I think that's Mr. Douglas, because you're talking about his sheet?
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't think that's from Mr. Carter. That's something Mr. Douglas could
we'll
explain,
facilitate that.
and again, that can be an internal
It could be.
internal document that was never intended necessarily for us to see, as far as eventually we're going to ask Mr. Carter to tell us about the 99.
So this summary sheet we requested because you asked, or was asked at the last hearing, about what is Mr. Douglas doing, what is some of the resolutions. So he has a master sheet that itemizes it by a loan. So we just summarize this as a way of keeping track of, but we've caught something that needs clarity here, so we'll provide those.
Okay, well then we'll just put the burden on Mr. Douglas to tell us he's holding 99. He's holding more than half our portfolio at this point in time, and so we'd like to see what the status of that portfolio looks like. And it would be real easy if the bankruptcy number is correct and the deceased and no revenue from the structure, it's real easy for us to say, hey, those are bad. They're not going to go anywhere. The 28, if they're really bad, I mean, something makes up the 28, and I can't come up with the 28 even going from left to right either. So they're closed for some reason. My assumption would be it would have been bankruptcy, out of business, or no revenue to pay it. So, and maybe you couldn't even make contact with them too in that 28. Any other questions? And thanks. And Mr. Douglas, I know this is not comfortable for you either. We're doing our best to try and get our handle around what we consider our obligation, which is to get a handle on all the assets of this organization out there. Any other comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, what you and the public know, we've made enormous progress on
You
this
have.
issue. It's not perfect yet, but the portfolio system is now becoming our system of record. I have to give a lot of thanks to the team, Mr. Hurtig, Ms. Parks Jackson, the economic development team. People have taken this handoff and really assumed ownership and stewardship of this portfolio. And so we've got some tweaks to make sure this doesn't happen again. But from where we were behind a gigantic rock, a lot of hard work. And so,
Well, don't let the good get sacrificed for the perfect. So keep up the good work, and we'll get there, I believe. And by the time we come back and look at that a year from now, and it's just chugging along as a regular piece of business, I think we'll all be more comfortable. But I don't believe that we should be giving over those questionable loans as early as 90 days. I think your team is capable of working those loans up and getting money back sooner and collecting it with our internal staff as opposed to going outside. I know at some point it needs to go over to Mr. Douglas, but I'd much rather us work it, because of what it does is it also helps us keep it close to the customer. And who knows, that customer might need another loan next week or 2 months from now, and if we're close to the customer, we can be there.
I think my answer at this point in time is, as we get the loan portfolio manager on board, that's part of their job and responsibility is to engage with borrowers. We just haven't done it historically at a level that UI would be satisfied with. So give that some runway and see how that works, and then we'll
Provide him or her with some incentive, and I guarantee you they'll collect the money a lot faster, and you'll be surprised. Thanks. Is there any other matters come before us? And I see that there are just throngs of people waiting out there to make a comment. Is there any comment from the public?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll close the meeting, and thanks.